Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report, and coming up here on today's show, we're going to do Josh McDaniels replacements if he's fired. Today's show is presented by our good friends Panda Sups, owned by a Raiders fan, and he wants you to make sure that you guys are just staying healthier. So use code GETHEALTHY for 25% off, and you get a free shaker at pandasups.com. Now, the key word in here is if. If fired. Josh McDaniels replacement. So what you're going to see here are my top 10 candidates. I have them ranked from 10 all the way down to 1. We also have some interim head coaches if the Raiders fire McDaniels in the middle of the season. And then even on top of that, some honorable mentions. So I think we can all agree, McDaniels has been a shit show so far. He's 13-23 as a head coach in the NFL. Las Vegas has blown 3 leads of at least 17 points, and the Raiders just haven't played with any heart this season, or they don't want to play for McDaniels. Both of those are not great. On top of all of that, you can look at all of the numbers that indicate to you how bad that this season really truly has been. From a not preparing standpoint, from a choking standpoint coming out of halftime. I mean, think about all the 17-point leads that the Raiders have blown this season. It's been an absolute joke. And I anticipate most people watching right now would love for the Raiders to fire McDaniels. So I'm going to look at all of you right now, and I'm going to beg you. Like the video if you want the Raiders to fire McDaniels. I'm hoping this thing gets 10,000 likes. I plan on sending this to the Raiders, whether it's via mail, whether it's email, whether it's just tweeting it at them. I want the Raiders to know that we deserve better, and McDaniels has got to get the hell out of here. I mean, this graphic alone makes me want to throw up. The fact that the Raiders lost all 3 of these games is sickening. I'll give you a pass on the Chiefs because they're the Chiefs, but there is no excuse with this much talent on a roster to blow this many 17-point leads. I mean, from 1960 to 2021, the Raiders blew 5 17-point leads. The Raiders have already blown 3 this season, and you still got 9 games to go. That's insane to me. That's an absolute disgrace. This man is a fraud, and the sooner Mark Davis realizes that, the sooner the Raiders are going to be better off and going in the right direction. But I already know some people are going to click on this video right now and like, Mitch, do you not follow the news? The Raiders already said that they're not going to fire McDaniels. I don't care. My job here is I never wanted McDaniels to be a head coach. I love this team. I know Raider Nation is the best damn fans in all of sports, and they deserve better. And my job is to try to get that out there. And I want the Raiders to hear us because one person can't do it. I can't do it alone. But when all of us rally together, we can create a voice for ourselves. I tweeted this out. Only 3 teams in NFL history have lost 3 games in a season that they led by 17 or more points. The 2020 Chargers fired Anthony Lynn. 2003 Falcons fired Dan Reeves. I mean, Raiders, Mark Davis, are you watching? Are you listening? I sure do hope so. But you know what? Josina Anderson, she tweeted this out, okay? League sources on the status of the Raiders, Josh McDaniels is safe. Don't believe the crowd noise. Everyone is disappointed, but no one is panicking. You see this right here? We all feel we have a good team. We just have to finish games better. That's not a league source. That's somebody in the Raiders locker room. That's somebody on the Raiders. Now, I did some digging, and one of my people told me that they believe the person that talked to Josina Anderson was Dave Ziegler, Raiders general manager. I heard Dave Ziegler say last week at 2-5 that he was proud or pleased with the job Josh McDaniels and Derek Carr have done. Personally, I'm calling bullshit. I don't believe anything right now that comes out of anybody's mouth, that comes out of anything from the Raiders front office right now, because they're all talking out of their ass. So I understand what Josina tweeted out. And maybe somebody did actually tell Josina what she tweeted. But it's bullshit. I don't believe it. If the Raiders lose to the Colts this week with an interim head coach, with Jeff Saturday, with somebody who's never called plays in their entire career, some 30-year-old whose name is escaping me right now, with arguably a third-string quarterback, whether it's Sam Ellinger, injured Matt Ryan, no Jonathan Taylor, the Raiders will then have to fire McDaniels. You have to. There's no more excuses at that standpoint. And I was told that the chances of them firing McDaniels if they lose to the Colts is actually a lot more of a real possibility than what people want to think. So, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, because if the Raiders do it, I'm going to be here. And oh my freaking Lord, if the Raiders fire McDaniels, that might be my show where I'm live for 24 straight hours partying. I don't care if I'm here by myself. I'll do this whole thing by myself. I don't care. That's how much I'll celebrate. So coming up right now, we're about to get into our top 10 list for the Raiders coaching candidates. This is all based in 2023 if the Raiders fire McDaniels. But before we get to 2023, obviously if you move on from McDaniels, you got to find an interim head coach. So the interim head coach would be more than likely hired from within. So what I figured I would do here, guys, is give you my top 5 options for interim head coach. Number 1 is Carmen Brasillo. Number 2, I threw in there as a Patrick Graham guy. Graham has struggled a little bit here and there. Number 3, 4, and 5, Mick Lombardi could be there. Antonio Pierce absolutely is another name to keep in mind. And realistically, those are probably the only 4. And then number 5 I'll throw in there is Edgar Bennett on top of that, for the simple fact of he has 30 years of coaching experience. Do I really want any of those guys right now? I don't really know how I feel about the interim head coach. But the reason why y'all clicked on this video is because of the top 10 list in terms of who I would want to be the Raiders head coach next season if the Raiders fired Josh McDaniels. So let's get into it now. Number 10 on my list here, it's going to be offensive coordinator from the Buffalo Bills, Ken Dorsey. He was an NFL coach from 2003 to 2008, and personally, I think Dorsey has done a pretty good job with Josh Allen this year. Cam Newton also on top of that, and he's been coaching in the NFL since 2013. I wouldn't mind an offensive-minded coach. I also like the idea of somebody who's been able to work in different schemes before. So Ken Dorsey comes in on my list at number 10. At number 9 on my list, it's Byron Leftwich, who I actually think his stock has dropped a little bit because of the struggles of what Tampa Bay has been dealing with this season. Leftwich basically had the Jags head coaching job last season, decided he didn't want to work for Trent Baalke, and he's like, all right, man, I'm out. He's worked with Tom Brady for 2 years. What if Leftwich brought Brady over next season? Something to think about. Also, he played in the NFL from 2003 to 2012. Byron Leftwich is an aggressive, offensive-minded coach, which is what I think a lot more NFL teams really, truly need. So when you think about jobs, okay, I want you to grade it, because grading a job is based on players. It's based on location. It's based on how much money you would get. So grade the Raiders head coaching job for me. A, B, C, D, or F. I personally believe the Raiders, with their fan base, with them moving to Vegas, it's an A grade. It is an A job. So for a lot of coaches out there, they would jump at this opportunity. Let's go to number 8 here on my list. It's Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. He started as an offensive assistant for Louisville back in 2010. Steve's coached both sides of the football at the NFL level, which I always like, especially in a head coach. And he's done a great job this season with Jalen Hurts. Hurts has grown massively in terms of a coach. I will say I'm going to tip my cap more to Nick Sirianni, but Steichen has been able to learn underneath Sirianni. And I look at what Philadelphia has done with that offense, and instead of them trying to force Jalen Hurts into their offense, they're building their offense around Hurts. And I hope that if Steichen was hired as the Raiders head coach, that's what you would get. Number 7, and I might have this guy too low. The more and more I watch Shane Waldron, the more and more I think that this could be the next Kevin O'Connell, could be the next Mike McDaniel, the next Sean McVay. He has had a very impressive coaching tree under guys like Bill Belichick, underneath Sean McVay. He's worked underneath Pete Carroll, and he's doing wonders right now with Geno Smith. He's been coaching in the NFL since 2008, and here's one of these younger-minded coaches that just brings some fun to your offense. And the fact that you look at the amount of success that Seattle has had this season, Waldron deserves a lot, and I mean a lot of credit for that offense. Now, before we get into our top 6 coaching candidates, if the Raiders have the balls to fire McDaniels, today's show is presented by Panda Sups. And if you use code GETHEALTHY, you're going to be able to save 25% off, and you're going to get a free shaker at pandasups.com. Now, the only way you're going to get the deal is if you get the greens, and the greens are a great way to make sure that you're staying healthy, because let's face it, it's hard to get greens in your diet every day. I take a scoop of greens every morning. There's also some caffeine in there, and this is what the shaker bottle looks like what you are going to get for free. So if you are trying to stay healthy because, I don't know, guys like Daniel Jimenez, John Keith, and frickin' Ace Boy and Trivan are making you drink all the time on the Raiders Report, then hey, get some greens in you. Scan that QR code right now with your phone for 25% off for a free shaker, pandasups.com. Number 6 on my list coming in here is offensive coordinator for the New York Giants, Mike Kafka. Kafka's been coaching since 2016. He's done a good job this season with Daniel Jones, and he's been playing in the NFL since 2010 to 2015. Last year, the number one candidate that I wanted the Raiders to hire, his name, Brian Daboll, and he's doing wonders for the New York Giants. These are, I think, one of the biggest reasons why they are the way they are. And the fact that Kafka learned underneath Andy Reid, that's a positive. And now he's also learning underneath Brian Daboll. Kafka's another coach that I don't think quite people realize how good he has the opportunity to be. Number 5 on the list is going to be a familiar face, and I don't know exactly if he has all of the mindset or offensive playing ability that some of these other guys do, but I know this. Rich Bisaccia is a leader, and if you plan on trying to keep Derek Carr for one more year, Rich Bisaccia might be the guy that you try to do. He took over for John Gruden last season, led the Raiders to the playoffs, and he might not be this offensive-minded guru. And I actually will say that I actually think Josh McDaniels would be a better offensive play caller than Rich Bisaccia. It's not a shot at Bisaccia, but Bisaccia is a leader of men. Bisaccia can be a head coach. He just has to hire a beautiful staff around him and let somebody else call the plays on offense, let somebody else call the plays on defense, and Bisaccia still is the head of that special teams. But he is number 5 on my list for a reason because I don't know how likely it is. At number 4, I'm going to go with D'Amico Ryans, and I freaking love D'Amico Ryans here. I should also mention that this list is a mix of my rankings and how much I like coaches combined with who I think Mark Davis would try to hire. D'Amico Ryans was interviewed last year, and he's a great young defensive-minded coach, and a lot of Shanahan coordinators have been solid. He played in the NFL from 2006 to 2015, and a great linebacker. I think Dave Ziegler, if you move on from Josh McDaniels, you're going to see Dave Ziegler try to take a page out of what New England did, or technically what Tennessee did, and hiring a linebacker in Mike Vrabel. D'Amico Ryans gives me Mike Vrabel vibes, where people are going to just rally around him. And you've tried to go offensive mind. Like, let's face it, Gruden, offensive mind. I like offensive-mindedness, don't get me wrong. But there's a part of me where you're like, all right, if the Raiders' defense has been so bad for 20 years, and we've talked about how bad the Raiders' defense has been in the Achilles heel, maybe that's where you decide to go. Look at Robert's Law right now with the Jets. They just beat the friggin' Buffalo Bills. Defensive-minded coach, the guy I would look at is D'Amico Ryans. Now, some guys who didn't quite make my top 10 list, but I had to throw them in here as honorable mentions. I'm going to throw in Leslie Frazier, Raheem Morris. Eric Bieniemy is a name in here, though I don't think the Raiders would hire him because of his past. Irayo Ivero, Gerard Mayo, Jack Del Rio, Kellen Moore, and Dan Quinn. All honorable mentions. Now, I still got to get into my top 3 list here for my Raiders head coaching candidates if McDaniels is fired. Friendly reminder, you guys can find me literally anywhere at Mitchell Renz 365. And if you're a diehard Raider fan looking for even more exclusive content, RaidersReport.locals.com. Hit me up. I personally think you guys would have a lot of fun over there. Number 3, this is the guy who I thought was going to be the Raiders head coach. It's Jim Harbaugh, head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. And I get it. He's with Michigan. He's got a deal there. But you know what? Him and Mark Davis are good friends. Harbaugh worked with the Raiders back in like 2000. A lot of the staffers inside of that Raiders organization, they wanted the Raiders to hire Harbaugh. All the beat reporters out there were saying it was Harbaugh's job to lose, and at Dodds, Mark Davis decided to go a totally different route and hire Josh McDaniels. And Harbaugh's done it in the NFL. He's done it in college. He deserves to be on this list, even if it might not be all that realistic. Number 2. It's Brian Flores. And the reason why Flores is so high up on my list is because of his connection with Dave Ziegler. If you want to keep Dave Ziegler, but you want to get rid of McDaniels, this is the guy that you hire if you're Mark Davis. He has a good head coaching record. I don't care what anyone says, but Mitch, he's 24-25. The Miami Dolphins were the biggest laughingstock in the NFL before Flores took over, and I think he's done a really good job. Yes, Mike McDaniel has done good, but look how much talent that team has right now, and Tua is finally healthy. He was fired for no reason, in my personal opinion, down in Miami. Brian Flores deserves to be a head coach in the NFL. It's why he's number 2 on my list. But here's the thing. There was a clear-cut number 1, and it's really not all that close to me, and it shouldn't be close to anybody else. It's Sean Payton, former head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Here's the guy that you bring in, Mark. Here's the guy that you offer a boatload of money to, because he did technically retire from coaching in 2021, but Sean Payton was just on Monday Night Football this week and said that he wants to coach, and he wouldn't mind coaching in a year or 2 years from now. He's going to be the top candidate for every team. The Saints do still own his rights, so you would technically have to make a trade for him. A career coaching record of 152-89. He's got a Super Bowl ring. He's an offensive-minded coach. He would come into this team immediately and offer respect from every single person on that team. And if you want to find a quarterback, Sean Payton can do it. Sean Payton turned the New Orleans Saints after Hurricane Katrina into an absolute disaster, into a winning football franchise. The Raiders, after this season, are going to be a disaster. He can turn it around. This is the guy you should hire if you fire McDaniels. So who's going to be the Raiders head coach next year? Is it going to be McDaniels, or do you think it's going to be somebody else? Type JM for McDaniels, type O for other. I can't wait to see what you guys have to say. So McDaniels replacements ranked from 1 to 10 here. I got Sean Payton at 1, Brian Flores at 2, Jim Harbaugh at 3, D'Amico Ryans 4, Rich Bisaccia at 5, Mike Kafka 6, Shane Waldron 7, Shane Steichen at 8, Byron Leftwich at 9, and coming in here at number 10, it is Ken Dorsey.